The Daily Jaws 50th Anniversary interview series is a collection of amazing conversations exploring the legacy of Steven Spielberg's screen adaptation of Jaws through the eyes of the fans. We'll be talking to famous fans, shark experts, people whose lives have been changed by the movie, and those that were there that helped to make the film. We'll also be telling you about two amazing organisations that are very close to our hearts. Anyway, that's enough from me. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
And the Islanders did not like these people. They didn't clean up. Dreyfus was chasing every woman in the whole island. And I mean, this sort of stuff was crazy. I think Jaws was the high watermark for film in general. Watch the movie, study it.
Hey guys, it's Ross over at the Daily Jaws with another exclusive interview for the 50th anniversary of Jaws. Today's guest is a Hollywood veteran, special effects makeup genius, whose credits include Sin City, The Hateful Eight, Jurassic Park, and one of my all-time favourite creature features, Lake Placid. He's also a huge Jaws fan. Guys, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Nick Marra to the Daily Jaws. How you doing, Nick?
Very good. Thanks so much. I love the Daily Jaws, and I love Jaws, and it's a pleasure to talk about my favorite film by far.
Well, this is a conversation I've been wanting to have for such a long time, because you and I have been sort of in touch through sort of Facebook and various mediums for a few years now. And obviously we have a great mutual friend, Greg Nicotero, who's a massive Jaws fan. I'm obviously sort of trying to speak to as many Jaws fans as possible about what the movie means to them and why we're still talking about it 50 years later. And obviously you're working in the industry, and a part of the industry potentially that's been sort of kickstarted by Jaws and that amazing practical effects work that was done sort of back in 1974. What is it about Jaws for you that makes it your favorite movie?
I saw it in 1975 in its opening run. Yes, I'm old. We didn't see it when it opened. It opened in June in Canada, in Windsor, Ontario. It was packed. It was sold out. The big Odeon Theater was the biggest theater in Windsor, and there were lines around the block. I don't know if my parents were lazy about getting there a little late, but we weren't able to get in. No, we tried in July. We couldn't get in.
Wow.
Lines block. And then finally in August, we actually got in. And there was and normally I like to sit towards the back of the theater, but we were probably around 3/4 of the way back in the theater. And yeah, I have to say it changed my life, because I was never the same after that, seeing that movie. I fell in love with movies. There were things I loved, like as a kid, I loved like the sci-fi 50s movies, Day the Earth Stood Still, them. I love those films, love the original Godzilla, Westworld, 73. But 75 is when I saw the potential of what film can be. Music, the performances, the direction, the editing. It just opened my eyes. I was 12. So I was old enough to understand what was being shown to me, and that this was a special moment. And yeah, I was so blown away by the film. The Indianapolis scene, the first time I saw the movie, I don't even remember what Robert Shaw was saying. I was just completely transfixed by, I was like to his eyes. I was hooked into his eyes, and that's obviously big shock. My favorite character in the movie was Quint. So I really thought that this took film to a new level. And, in 1975, it was, I realized I have to get into film. And probably in the practical aspect of things, although I had a flirtation of trying to be the next Ray Harryhausen, doing stop motion. Most of the directors that I've worked with, except for Spielberg, Jaws was their favorite movie. It's incredible the reach that movie has, and I think it speaks to a lot of people just because of all the craftsmanship, and Spielberg was so young, he was so scared. You know, I'm good friends with Joe Alves, and the
Mm.
stories of the set, the pressure that he was on. But I think it's probably a little bit like the minerals, whatever that expression is, that are crushed to create a diamond. It really shouldn't have worked. That movie, like The Shark, originally mostly didn't work. The movie shouldn't have worked. They had no script. They're going to Martha's Vineyard, and no script. They didn't know what was going to happen. Shark wasn't working. The movie went way, way over budget. And this is a young director thinking he's going to get fired every second. Most of the Jaws fans know all this, but that was it. It was a perfect storm. And
Mm.
working on movies, when I started to work, I think it's 88 was the first movie that I worked on, a dreadful film called The Sleeping Car. And on set, watching scenes get cut, watching how everyone works together sometimes, and seeing the final product, and it's usually disappointing. Uh, but on occasion, you'll work on a movie where it becomes magic. It's really hard to tell when you're going to get lightning in a bottle. And
Mm.
obviously, for the people on Jaws, over the years I've worked with people that worked on Jaws, whether it be well, meeting Robert Shaw's daughter, who is also 12, my same age, during Jaws, and her reminiscing about what she remembers of the film was, you know, the older crew, very old crew, like most movies were back then, and a very young director, like this kid. She couldn't believe it. And then talking to Virginia Jensen about the difficulties on the film, the relationship with Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss. It was confrontational from the get-go, but I do think it was more like from her, getting that from her, it seemed more than just a method acting style of, oh, we're adversaries in the film.
Mm.
I'm going to be adversarial with you off camera. I
Mm.
think that might have been some of it, but I do think, and I think Virginia Jensen pretty much told me uh, that I think Robert Shaw was a little worried what Dreyfuss represented. And I think there's an interview with Dreyfuss where he talks about that Robert Shaw literally came up and told him, I suppose there could be a career for a short, unattractive Jewish man in this business. He literally said that to Dreyfuss. And there was a few,
Wow.
also Virginia Jensen, when she first met him, he had just finished From Russia with Love. That was the first time they met.
Mm.
And she couldn't stand him because she just said he reeked of arrogance. Like he's the most beautiful man that could have any woman. And she just couldn't stand him. But unfortunately, they're like, oh, you got to work with him. And it's like, oh, great. So, but I think the style that Shaw brought and his history, he saw Dreyfuss as not anything that would be considered a movie star.
Mm.
And so she said they disagreed about everything, whether it be the sky, it's a beautiful blue sky. And Robert Shaw would be like, no, it's not. You know, it's red. Just whatever they could do, it was just confrontation constantly. And when I think at the Hollywood show in 2017, I brought my Robert Shaw figure, full figure,
Mm.
sitting in the chair, crushing the beer. Dreyfuss came out and talked to it and whispered to it and kissed it twice.
Mm.
And I asked him what he said, and he said, that's between Robert and I.
Mm.
And, but he did, you could tell he was moved. It was an emotional moment for him, even though it was silicone and fiberglass and foam and whatnot. Uh, there was a, there was a bond there, and he really missed his old friend. But again, it was a love-hate relationship. But that was kind of a long-winded way of saying that the movie ran through my career. Like all the people I'd work with, Dick Warlock on The Relic,
Yeah.
he doubled this in the cage scene, and talking to him, but he said that he really didn't know. I basically considered a pickup scene, so he doesn't even know what's going on, other than he's got a double Richard Dreyfuss.
And you're right, directors, because of the filmmakers that I've spoken to, the directors seem to be the ones that are the most appreciative of Jaws, because obviously that's a vision that's been brought together, and you've got every aspect of the craft firing on all cylinders, whether it's the writing, the music, the editing, the acting, whatever it is. Do you think in Jaws, and this is going to be like choosing between your favorite children or your children, is there any particular aspect of the craft that you think stands out and just makes Jaws that extra bit special? Or do you think it is just a combination of everything going just
I
10 up to
well,
11?
yeah, I would say, like I said, it's actually, I can't understate this enough, that we were a real movie family. And it sounds weird, a 12-year-old talking about directing and editing. That's kind of the family I grew up with. It
Mm,
was, I was the youngest, so I'm hearing things about what, proper direction, pacing, editing, composition. And we started, like, Duel came on,
mm,
and it gave me a new appreciation for Duel when I saw Duel after seeing Jaws. I saw Duel when it first came out. I loved it, but it didn't exactly have the impact that Jaws did. Watching or revisiting Duel, absolutely one of my top 10 favorite, like I tell everybody, my top 20 or 20 films in my top 10. I
mm,
stuff those in. I have to put those in the top 10. I love Duel. Watching
mm,
that again, that was the first film for me of Spielberg. And I don't think I realized, because that was, I was probably 10 when I saw that. And I think when that came out, I was a little too young. But
mm.
watching it, in a 12, 13-year-old, I was like, oh, this is magical. And the joy of the directing. This was a young kid who's trying to show what he can do.
Yeah.
Where later films, for me, I think there was a certain comfort that he had later in his career. And still, a lot of great, great films. Schindler's List, when I was in the theater watching that, I over and over in my head, I was saying, I can't believe Steven Spielberg's directing this. It's the most un-Spielberg movie he's ever done. That
Mm,
was a really tough movie. I've still never seen it twice. It
mm,
was such a difficult movie. But in his younger days, he really was trying to wow people, but with just the way he'd set up a shot. It was so brilliant for such a young guy. I don't think, with all due respect, to even the great Hitchcock, I don't remember exact compositions like that. Certainly of a
mm.
young guy, 20.
Yeah.
At the time, I think Dooley was 24. That's mind blowing. Nothing
Yeah.
like that. Prodigy. But uh, it it's really difficult to say the one composition or the one aspect of the film. I think, if anything, it was the joining of all the excellence in one moment. Was when they first see the shark the first time. The music, the crescendo, it
Mm,
was it was absolutely riveting. And
mm,
and again, in the theater, seeing that in the theater, and the music was loud. Yeah, I didn't want the movie to end. I
mm,
was so upset the movie ended. I distinctly remember after the movie, the family went to the McDonald's and we parked. And I remember putting my hand out the door in the parking lot, and I pulled my arm up like a shark was going to get it. That's the kind of impact. And don't tell me that any Jaws fan didn't jump in a pool back then and say, what's the story on the drain? Are we sure
mhm.
that the shark's not going to come out of the drain? And again, I was in Windsor, Ontario. Yeah, our big lakes look like oceans, but we had a swimming pool, a local swimming pool, and I was always kept my eye on the drain just in case. But
Mm.
that's the profound effect. And then, of course, I had to learn about sharks. I just all of a sudden became fascinated with these killing machines, as Hooper would say. Finding out obviously that they aren't killing machines, but I just had to learn more. I found them beautiful. And then years later, on that wonderful film, Creature, Peter Benchley's Creature, I got to do my own great white, a pregnant female, it was a 10-footer. And that was fun getting to do
Mm.
that. And I think Spy Kids, oh, that's another guy, Rodriguez, loved Jaws. It's his favorite movie.
Mm.
And he had, I think it was Spy Kids 2 that I worked on, and I got to do, Dave Grasso and I, two shark fanatics. We got to do, it was a tiger shark for
Mm.
that film. So that's always fun when you get to do, it's like, oh, who should sculpt a shark? And they all look at me.
Straight away. In terms of practical effects and special effects makeup and stuff, obviously you're a fan of Godzilla and obviously massive Jaws fan, and you've crafted your own sharks. Where do you think Bruce kind of sits in the practical effects landscape in terms of cinema? If that question
Good,
makes sense.
very good question. And this is going to be a complicated answer. First of all, and I found this out from Joe Alves personally, because I asked Joe, I was like, where did the mouth proportions come from? Because after sculpting a few great whites, you're like, those proportions, and he goes, those were directly from Spielberg. All the original drawings that Joe did of the shark attacking the cage,
Mm.
that was when nobody was working on Jaws. It was an idea. I think Universal had picked up the script, and
Mm.
Richard Zanuck, who is the head of the studio, called Joe, who was, I think, an artist on staff at Universal, and said, "Hey, Joe, I need a great white attacking a cage drawing." So Joe didn't even know what it was for, so he did it. But those original drawings, you see the proportions are pretty accurate.
Mm.
Didn't have the extremely wide jaws and the massive teeth. So
Mm.
that part of me thinks the overall forest of that Bob Matty creation was not accurate. So it was almost like a caricature of a great white shark.
Mm.
But, and again, that's on Spielberg. But again, I understand why Spielberg wanted it like that. It looked more terrifying because to get those proportions of the mouth size, that shark would have to be 50 feet long. No one is making a 50-foot shark.
Yeah.
So I get what they were trying to do. And it's funny, talking back to Lake Placid, we ended up doing the same thing on Lake Placid. Steve Miner wanted the head of the crocodile bigger. To be more terrifying. And so that was one, I think that was 32 feet long.
Mm.
And head, gosh, it's been way too long and I'm getting senile, but I would say that head was at least 5.5 feet long. And for a 32-footer, that head actually should be more like 4 feet. But again, the mouth is not as big, it's not as scary. You don't really see a lot of the whole crocodile. So those are the allowances that you have to make for. But as far as what's on screen, it's really excellent.
Mm.
I really enjoyed it. And again, that's part of the magic. It worked enough for Spielberg to really make some great use out of it. And, Verna Fields cutting it as well into really, really effective. Because like I said, I won't say, does it look like a real great white shark? I'd say, no, it doesn't. But it's like a character. And Stan talk about that all the time, about not just making something look real, but making it a character of its own.
Mm.
And I think that might have been one of the things that the crew was kind of going for. But like the stabbing of it, the pieces, the cutting, the damage on the skin, I love that.
Yeah.
It's super clean.
Mm.
And that is one of the things you definitely want to have. And I know I did that on the 10-footer that I did for Creature. You know,
Mm.
it had lots of scarring because they get trapped in nets, they get bit by other sharks. I mean, a lot of things can happen. And those little details were just beautiful. And
Yeah.
then there's the problem of the later movies where technically it might have been better, might have in some ways uh, maybe worked better. I think the third movie they had the detachable jaws, I think, for the third film. And, you know, they didn't have that in the original Jaws. The
Mm.
teeth were totally locked in. But what I found was if you don't have the right kind of film, I mean, those were really not a fan of the later movies, and they ended up showing the shark too long. You got to
Mm.
cut stuff. You have to have conflicting elements that kind of throw your eyes away from what's happening in a scene. You can't linger. I think Stan might have said that to a director on Creature when they called me into the break room,
Mm.
and Stan was there with the director of Creature, and it was a shot of the shark that I sculpted, and the director looks all confused, and it's literally a 12 or 10-foot silicone shark in the water that they shot in the Bahamas. There's no vegetation, there's no anything in the scene. It's just literally a 10-foot shark. And the director's like, well, why doesn't it look real? And I thought I was on candid camera. He said, why does the skin not look wet? And I was like, this certainly is candid camera. I couldn't believe. And Stan was telling him how to direct when you have,
Mm.
he started bringing up Terminator. He's like, when you have elements in a scene, you got to have like either flashing lights or something to make the scene, the composition look more interesting. Instead,
Mm.
that could have been a swimming pool that shark was in because it was very clear uh, water in the Bahamas, but
Mm.
there's nothing there. And he's like, you got to don't show the whole thing, show parts of it.
Mm.
And I think that, you know, it was interesting to see that in the hands of the right filmmaker, you can make something that's not alive look alive. In that, like I said, it worked enough that Spielberg was able to
Mm.
get some great stuff, and it actually made it such a better movie because Spielberg said in many interviews he wanted the thing shown in the first 15 minutes. That was his
Mm.
idea he wanted.
Mm.
But I think it made it so much better when they
I,
had to jest the shark instead of
I,
show the shark.
but it just goes to show when you know how to cast your movie correctly, shoot it well, and then infer your monster before showing it, you can't really mess it up, I don't think. I mean, obviously, I'm not a filmmaker myself, but it's like those seem to be the lessons that we're getting from Jaws, and they seem to be the lessons that directors are picking up. I mean, there's a director we're trying to speak to called James Wan, who is a massive, massive Jaws fan. He directed Saw with Carrie Elwes, who's also a massive Jaws fan. But you could see the DNA of Jaws carrying through with these directors 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, and Spielberg is still out there showing us how it's done. It's incredible, which leads me to probably the most awkward question I'm going to ask you. Do you think Jaws is still Spielberg's best movie, even though it's your favorite? I know, I'm sorry, I've asked everybody. I could not leave you out on this. I know,
Anyway,
what a horrible question.
um, you know, it's funny. I've never been asked that ever. Uh, we're getting a bad signal. I can't.
Oh,
Can
you
you hear
break
me?
up. I can't hear. So, Nick, come in, Nick. What?
uh, I guess my first question would be, what do you mean greatest? uh, I, I, I have to say, I mean, Schindler's List is such a masterpiece, but it's not hit. It doesn't look. It's not his DNA. Working on Lost World, I think it was Lost World, second Jurassic Park.
Mm.
Spielberg he literally did that because Universal said, if you do the second or the sequel to Jurassic Park, we'll fund Schindler's List for you. So his focus, he was all over Schindler's List while he was doing Lost World. And there was one scene, I think we were in Oregon with the compies, the small green dinosaurs, and there was a panning shot, a guy looking over the dailies, and said, "Oh, Stephen, there's a ladder in the woods," and somebody had left the ladder there, and he goes, "Don't worry." He didn't and you could see it in the movie. He had no love for Lost World. I'm sure I'm shocking some people right now by that. It was literally, he was forced to do it because he really wanted to do Schindler's List, and that is such a different movie. I mean, it was such a powerful, different kind of Spielberg film entirely. So this is my long way of saying yes, Jaws is his greatest movie.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
I'll
think
stay.
this is the thing. I think that Spielberg has evolved and grown and developed as a storyteller and a filmmaker, and the craft that he's shown is it's just beyond anything we probably thought was possible. But for me, it all kind of started with Jaws when he was really able to be given a good budget and really
Yeah,
execute his pure vision, because that is it's probably the rawest Spielberg movie, I think. But I think it sort of just signaled it was started to develop his signature and his voice in terms of the way, this is the way I want to make movies, and if I'm given the right resources, this is what I can do. And then obviously we've got this amazing, because I mean things worked out for Spielberg after Jaws, let's be honest. But it's kind of like this announcement of this amazing talent who's just continued to be so consistent and engaging for the last 50 years. I mean, it's 50 years, it's mad. Um,
yeah.
what about the book? Obviously, we talked about the movie quite a lot. Have you read the book? What do you think about the book?
Not a fan.
No?
No, fan. I didn't read it. Like, all knew that's part of the reason we were excited to go see it, because I think my older brother had read it. I think my sister read it. And probably my other brother read it, but I didn't. And not that I couldn't read, I
Mm,
just I was curious to see what the movie was going to be, but it was big. It was funny. 1973, 74, that book was huge. It was the best-selling book.
mm,
And I remember, as I got older, I finally read it and was very disappointed, actually, with the book. Uh, yeah, I didn't like the direction, the the ripping off of the death of Quint. Just completely lifted. I always had a problem with uh, scene stealing from other films. So whether even, and it was done well, even like Untouchables, the sequence with the carriage going down the steps. I enjoyed that scene, but I'm also kind of mad at it because it's a shot for shot lift of the great Sergei Eisenstein. It kind of frustrates me. Or some other films
mm.
Alma did where it's shot for shot taken from Hitchcock, and the way Spielberg would do an homage was to Hitchcock with the scene with Scheider on the beach, or
Mm.
let's call him, and the person would cut by, and the panning, the zoom pan, that was an homage. It's not a scene for scene lift.
Mm.
That is, I think, probably my issue with one of the big issues, and I think the affair with Hooper and
Ellen.
Brody's, I
Mm.
thought was completely hack. It's yeah. That's one of the few films that's better than the book.
Mm. Yeah.
Might want
And
to,
I think, no, I think you're right. I mean, I think David Brown and Zanuck sort of are very quick to identify the key plot points and go, right, this is, I think, paraphrasing them, this is an A to B adventure story. The star is a fish, and let's make that work, because the rest of it, as we say, I mean, like one of the big pluses of the movie and one of the biggest sort of contentions I have with the book is that none of the characters are likable. And Spielberg is
Yeah.
sort of on record as saying that he was kind of rooting for the shark. And like you, it took me
Yeah.
a while before I read the book, and I'm like, actually, yeah, I'm kind of hoping they all die, to be honest with you, because I don't really like any of them. But the essence of the story that Spielberg was able to pull from that with his team of writers and creators was incredible. And when I've talked about the movie a lot, because I've been on a few podcasts as well, it's like Jaws was like not just that perfect lightning in a bottle moment where all the right things came together, but it was also a lot of the right things going wrong as well, because it allowed the movie to be written more thoroughly or workshopped more thoroughly from an acting point of view. And okay, so we'll hide the shark, therefore we'll put it in the minds of the audience and let them decide how scary it is. And all of these things, like we're saying, these are lessons that we're still learning and we're still sort of and these stories we're still discovering. There was a recent discovery that we made. Well, I say we made that a Jaws fan made about why the date is incorrect that Quint gives in the Indianapolis speech. Did you hear about that?
Oh, yes, yes.
Amazing. And it's like 50 years later, we're still learning things. You know, there's a whole squad, there's thousands of Jaws detectives out there trying to uncover the truth about this movie. And
No
talking
doubt.
of
Or yet, it's like the scene comparing scars. Did you hear about Robert Shaw breaking his tooth?
I've heard something about this. Go on, what did you hear?
Well, Virginia Jensen told me when I met her. In the first time I met her was I was at a wedding. That's such a crazy story. I was at a wedding in Santa Monica. My wife and I only knew the bride, no one else,
Hmm,
and it's assigned seating.
okay.
Boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl. Girl sitting right next to me, and I'm hearing her talk to her friend. She says something about Robert Shaw, and I was like, I turned to her, I said, Robert Shaw, the actor? And she looks at me, oh no, it's his son. I'm like, oh my, really? I said, and I literally had just finished my little small sculpture, this guy. And
Show us it. Show us the sculpture. Can you move it? By the way, guys, Nick does amazing Jaws sculptures. We've posted them on the Instagram from time to time. Look at that. Oh my God. Wow. That's good work. It's good work. It's good work.
but so she said, oh, well, the Grand Madam is coming in from the UK. And I was like, what? And she says, oh, you should come down. So we exchanged phone numbers. So the wedding was on a Saturday. Monday, I'm in Pacific Palisades. And I'm going to this house. And I come in, and it's the house of one of Robert Shaw's daughters, who is 12. She was on set. She doesn't remember that much about the film, but it was her home, and it wasn't like a shrine to Robert Shaw at all. There was one big photo on the wall of Robert Shaw, and I think it was from Battle of the Bulge.
Mhm.
Um, so then there's Virginia Jensen. I meet her. She's unbelievable. And that's right. Yeah, I brought two. I brought a fully darkened Quint and a white one, because I used to do those, like a dark one and a light one, really light.
Mm.
And I brought both to her. And I thought she would just pick one, but she ended up taking both of them. She said, I'll keep one here in the US, because he had 7 kids in the US and
Yeah.
3 in the UK. So, but then she started telling me magical stories. I mean, yeah, obviously, mostly about Robert Shaw, and on Jaws, and that's where she told me about the relationship with Dreyfus. That was always difficult.
Mm.
But one of the things she told me, she said, "Oh, the scene in the Indianapolis scene." She said that they were at dinner one night after filming, and Robert bit, I think it was steak bone, but he knocked a tooth out. And Robert Shaw looked at Spielberg and said, "Hey, maybe we could use this for the Indianapolis scene."
Yeah, it could
That's
be.
And
I didn't
that,
know that.
yeah, I was like, wow, I never heard that. And
I've never heard that.
yeah, and she said right after that, the huge fight. And the Islanders did not like these people. They didn't clean up. Dreyfus was chasing every woman in the whole island. And I mean, sort of stuff was crazy. But uh, but yeah, they had a huge food fight, throwing food at you. Imagine that, Robert Shaw throwing food at Spielberg, and everyone's throwing food at each other, and it was just madness.
Hey guys, it's Ross. I hope you're enjoying this week's episode. Bruce and I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about a couple of the organisations that we've been working with, and also some of the new products you can find in our store. Minorities in Shark Sciences, or MISS for short. A non-profit founded in 2020 that champions diversity in shark, ray and marine sciences. MISS creates equitable opportunities for historically underrepresented communities through hands-on programs and believes that diverse scientists bring diverse ideas, driving the innovation essential for ocean conservation. Representation matters, and MISS is making sure the next generation sees a place for themselves in marine biology. Learn more and support their mission at missalesmo.org. The mission of the Tourette Association of America is to provide help and hope to those affected by Tourette syndrome, tic disorders, and associated conditions through awareness, research, and support. It's the only national organisation serving the community and works to raise awareness, advance research, and provide ongoing support to patients and families impacted by Tourette syndrome and tic disorders. To this end, the Tourette Association of America directs a network of 31 chapters, 83 support groups, and recognises 18 centres of excellence across the country. It's a non-profit organisation and is extremely close to the heart of not just Jeffrey Kramer, but also his family. The Daily Jaws store is home to some of the world's most exciting Jaws products, including screen-accurate barrels and tanks, a chalkboard shark shadow caster, a yellow barrel koozie, an orca transom and 3 yellow barrel keychains, and much more. Visit store.thedailyjaws.com. For non-US orders, please email orders@thedailyjaws.com. Thanks for listening. Now back to the show.
Absolute madness. But she also told me something. This is for you Robert Shaw fans. She said that Robert Shaw was great friends with Dick Zanuck. And before the sting, Robert Shaw was playing racquetball with Zanuck. And he twisted his ankle like a week before filming. So if you look at Robert Shaw's character, he's got a limp. Some people thought it was improvisation. It was not. He actually twisted his ankle playing the week before with Richard Zanuck. They were very, very good friends. As a matter of fact, I think it was Virginia Jensen who actually told me how important Zanuck was to keeping that movie from getting pulled completely.
Yeah.
When they flew out, Zanuck and Brown, they were hearing it, and it was actually one of the most brilliant moves by Spielberg not to film at Universal. The original idea was to film at Universal in a tank, and Spielberg was like, "No, I want to be out on the water." And granted, that turned into a nightmare with the shark and salt water, but what happened was they were being told, I think Wasserman was the head of Universal at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Wasserman. He's like, you go find out what this kid's doing. He's doubling the budget. He's way over on the film time. And so they flew out. And what Spielberg did was cut a part of the movie. But Verna Fields had a huge hand in that. She was very important.
Yeah.
And they all and Robert Shaw was in the room while Zanuck was looking at the stuff. And Robert Shaw in the beginning of the film was kind of dismissive of it. And, he was the biggest star of the movie. And it wasn't supposed to go as long as it was because he had tax issues and he wanted to avoid tax issues. But what ended up happening, he literally told Zanuck at that moment, he's like, I really believe in this project and I will surrender the rest of my salary for the movie. And that's from Virginia Jensen's own mouth. She told me that.
Wow.
And that meant a lot to Zanuck because he, Robert Shaw was a pretty big star. He was the biggest star and it was a huge, bold move. And it was his old friend. They were
Mm.
great, and that helped Spielberg. That bought him some time.
What
And
a statement! What a statement to make as well. Being the biggest star of your movie, going, "I'll give up my salary." I mean, I've heard stories about that. Like, for example, with Paul Newman. There was
yeah,
a movie being made. I think it was with Susan Sarandon and another actor, and Susan Sarandon wasn't getting paid what he felt was appropriate, so he gave up part of his salary to make up the difference for her. So it's
uh,
you hear that the movie business is a rough place, but there are some really good people working in there, and
there's a
the knowledge that Shaw wasn't making any money from Jaws has been around for a long time, but now we might actually understand why. Wow,
yeah, yeah. He
what a guy!
it it was definitely uh, it was a surprise. I don't think when he signed on, he knew what it was going to be. I don't think anybody did,
Mm,
but there were pieces that he could see because you got to remember there's no music. They're looking at a rough cut, but there's enough there with people with enough vision that
mm,
could see what it could be.
mm,
And that's what allowed it. Zanuck and Brown went back saying, I think this is, I think this has potential.
mm.
And, but my God, they came so close to pulling the plug on that movie so many times. Uh,
It's a miracle that they even got to
yeah,
cinema. It really is
yeah,
incredible.
yeah. And then the rating with the Kintner boy killing that, I don't know how they pulled that off because that they were, I think, slipping a R or an X rating. An X rating, I think, was originally what it got here in the United States.
Mm.
And they were like, "Oh no, that can't fly. We got to make money on this movie." And somehow they left the scene in. They didn't cut it. They left it in, and it didn't get that would have been the kiss of death for the
Well,
movie.
just with the rating as well, I understand that in terms of the editing, there was a little bit more that you saw of the estuary victim's leg when it sinks to the
Oh,
bottom of the pond, and apparently they had to cut a little bit of that so it did get a PG rating or the rating that you guys had in America at the time. So they had to make some very specific cuts around the gore. But I mean, you look at that, you think, well, you got to make a couple of cuts around the leg floating, and then you've got a guy like Quint getting eaten alive on the deck of a boat. It's like, who's in charge here? Who's driving the car? Do you know what I mean? It's like, how'd you
I,
get away with this? It's nuts.
I remember the scene with the Kinder boy. That was like a big problem with the ratings. Was violence against children. That
Mm,
like bloody. It's a young kid on a raft and blood everywhere. That was a huge problem.
mm,
And in Canada, we had the Ontario Film Board. Those guys were a joke. They
mm.
tried to cut everything out, but for some reason they let Jaws go.
Which actually leads me nicely because obviously Jaws is a masterclass in editing, but there was other stuff that was shot, extended scenes and deleted scenes and so forth.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's a place for an extended cut of Jaws, or do you think we just need to leave it as it is?
It needs to be left exactly as it is. It's really hard for me to say that. Seeing it as a 12-year-old,
Mm,
I can't imagine. And actually, when it did come to TV, that's the TV version. A lot of those scenes were added.
mm,
And I think it came to TV in 76. I want to say it might have been 77. And it did nothing for me.
mm,
As a matter of fact, I actually didn't. And maybe it's just me, a traditionalist, maybe. Every time I see a director's cut of anything, I don't like it. I remember my buddy Dave, he got laser disc of, I want to say it was Aliens
mm.
direct. I didn't like it as much. I think it was Aliens. I'm really, yeah, I just remember it was something that I liked, and then it was the director's cut, and I didn't like it as much. Now, I will say, I will contradict myself immediately right now by saying Lord of the Rings, all three movies, I
Mm.
like and I don't care if they're like 15 years long. I don't care. I love them. And they actually make more sense, especially Return of the King.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. A lot of stuff had to get cut out, or they would have
Mm,
had to make two more movies.
mm,
But I love those. Those are the only films I've seen that I did see. I saw all the Lord of the Rings movies in the theater. Then my son, who's a fanatic of those movies, he got the extended edition, well, like
Mm,
for Christmas, and we watched them, and I was like, "Oh my God, these are even better."
yeah,
So I am. I'm. That's. But Jaws, no, no,
yeah.
no,
I,
no, no.
I, I, I would agree. I think in terms of Jaws, it's perfect as is. I mean, 2 hours and 4 minutes, you get through so much, but it's just the right pace. I think the pacing is, even though Jaws, in terms of pacing, comes into for a little bit of criticism, I think, no, you're kind of missing the point. The whole point is you're front ending this with character and circumstance and drama, and then you get out into the ocean and then you battle the shark. Whereas a lot of movies want to try and get to the shark as quickly as possible, which isn't the right way to do it. But I will
That's what.
disagree with you on one thing, though, which was the special edition. So my two favorite special editions are Aliens, which I because there's a key scene in that where Ripley is sitting on her own, and then Paul Reiser comes out and he shows her a picture of her daughter and realizes that her daughter's died while she's been in hypersleep, which then makes the whole story arc of
Oh,
Newt and Ripley much more meaningful. So I'm like, okay, that's brilliant. And apparently that scene was cut out to speed the movie up in terms of the theatrical release, but Sigourney Weaver was really upset about that because that was what she thought possibly could have won her an Oscar because she got nominated for Aliens. And Lord of the Rings, like you say, those special editions, like you, I think something like 12 hours long, something like that. It's incredible, but what they have added adds to the story. It helps make it make sense. It helps the characters have a bit more depth. Whereas what they did with Alien, the special edition, which came out probably 22 years ago, I think it was, there were a couple of scenes in there that were kind of just inserted, like a moment where Ripley finds Dallas entombed in the Nostromo as she's trying to sort of battle her way out in the final stages of the film. And I'm like, I didn't need to see that. I just wanted to kind of make up my own mind about what happened to Dallas, that kind of thing. So I think there is a place for those extra scenes or those extended editions, but I don't think Jaws is one of them. I think it's just perfect as it is. It really is.
it's just Reagan running down the stairs backwards. It's
Mm,
it's gratuitous, kind of shock. It doesn't add anything to the movie at
no,
all.
no,
And
not
those
at all.
of one of many examples, but I'll tie this one into Jaws. Check this one out. This is going to be really controversial. You just brought up Alien.
Go on.
In 1979, was Alien 79?
It
The
was,
first
yeah.
one.
Hmm.
Yeah. So 1979, I don't know about how it was in the UK, but in Windsor, and Windsor's right next to Detroit. So we always got the Detroit Free Press. We got the Windsor Star. And you open the entertainment page, and the ads for Alien said Jaws in outer space.
Yeah.
That was not the thing for me to see because it got my, I was expecting Jaws.
Hmm.
I went in, I didn't get Jaws.
Nope.
And this is again just me. And I know in our business, I actually was almost burned at the stake for suggesting this. I hated Alien the first time I saw it because I was expecting Jaws. I was the guy who wanted the alien to kill everyone. I did not any of the characters in Alien. It's so funny how I was younger, I was 16, 17 years old, but I appreciate it much more now. But
Mm.
back then, and they put the tag Jaws, and I was like, wow. And then they did the same thing with Star Wars.
Mm.
When Star Wars came out, the ads, big, huge ads like, this is 2001. It's not 2001. I love 2001. I went in to see this movie. I walked out.
Mm.
And I actually told Rick Baker that, who did the aliens in the with all the aliens. I was like, I'm out of here. And I told Rick that. And he's, hey, thanks a lot. But yeah, I was expecting 2001.
So
Yeah.
we're coming to the end of my questions. I mean, this has been fantastic. I've so enjoyed this, but obviously, as people know, we're on social media, and you and I have connected through Instagram, and every now and again, we'll throw out a controversial question to the audience, or we'll throw out what we think is a completely innocent question, and it causes wars. I'm going to ask you a couple of those questions now, Nick.
I'm from a different generation. I don't care.
All right, good. Well, this is going to be good. Okay, so the first controversial question from the first movie, out of Chrissy, Pippet, Alex, Ben Gardner, the estuary victim, and Quint, if you could only save one, who would it be and why?
Don't think it'll be Ben Garner.
Nope.
I would probably have to go with the true innocent Pippin.
All right. Good answer. Good answer. A few people have gone between Alex and Pippet. They can't quite choose, but I like you've committed.
There was a shark out there. The hell with him. No, just kidding.
Next question. Did they need a bigger boat?
Well, you know, it's so funny. When I first saw the movie and they went on the Orca, the first question was, even as a 12-year-old, I'm like, why aren't they taking the Ventura? Hooper's boat. Like, it's got sonar. And then I also realized, as I was thinking that, I slapped myself saying, what suspense is there in that? It would ruin all suspense. Yeah, how do you, with all the sonar, there it is. There's the shark right there. It's on sonar. Oh, here it comes. You can actually get a visual on it. It just.
I'm going to send you a screenshot of something through Facebook in a minute because that's my next question. Why didn't they take Hooper's boat? That was my next question. Because
obvious. No, that was a criticism. When people asked me way back then, like, well, come on, you like the movie too much. Is it a perfect film? And I'm like, no, they would have used Hooper's boat, obviously. But then it wouldn't be a movie. It wouldn't be interesting.
No.
Yeah. I have difficulty thinking that way. It's just the way some people think. I appreciate it for what it is and the way.
Yeah.
And again, part of it is, in reality, do you think a guy like Quint would go on Hooper's boat?
Exactly.
Not at all.
No way. And that seems to be the consensus when we've asked that question, because that is not even a Hooper decision. That's a Quint decision. And this is all about Quint, and it's his boat. Yeah. He's the captain, and it's like it's his way or the highway. And which is why there's that beautiful moment when Quint sort of tried everything, the Orca is sinking, and he sees Hooper messing around with his darts, and he goes, "What can you do with these things of yours?" And it's like, okay, I'm having to come around to your way of working now, otherwise, because I've tried everything, I'm out of ideas. So,
yes.
That was the controversial question, so you can relax. So I think the
controversial one for you. It's been brought up, and I've mentioned it before, but again, the younger folks will be like, "Who?" And it might be blasphemy, but I think Sterling Hayden would have been an amazing Quint.
I think he could have done.
Brilliant actor and a huge, imposing man. Because Robert Shaw, like Virginia Jensen told me that he told people he was 6 feet tall, but he was not. He wished he was 6 feet tall.
Yeah, apparently he had to wear lifts when he was fighting Sean Connery in the train, apparently. Yeah.
Connery's definitely a big guy. And to look more imposing, but Sterling Hayden is like 6'5". On screen, he would have been terrifying as Quint. I mean, he literally, Hooper would have looked like a small child next to him. But also, he is a real fisherman. He is the real deal. And like I said, brilliant actor. And I don't remember. I think he had tax issues where he didn't want to do Jaws, but they were trying to get him. But I think maybe schedule issue, or he was on the high seas, and they're like, we don't know when he's coming back. But he would be amazing. The other, like the Robert Redford, Paul Newman. Terrible idea. Terrible. That's just marketing. That's universal marketing. Or Lee Marvin. I love Lee Marvin. But no. What were some of the other for Hooper?
Well, there was Jeff Bridges. He was one.
I love Jeff Bridges. I just don't see it.
Do you know what
just
it
don't.
is? I think what it is because there's that extra, like what we were talking about before, where then that is that personal antagonism, if we're to believe that that's the situation where, maybe Robert Shaw does have a chip on his shoulder, or he's concerned about the way Hollywood is going, and Dreyfus represents, he's thinking this is the worst of Hollywood. We wouldn't necessarily have got that kind of dynamic. And when you look at, I mean, obviously Richard Dreyfuss is a smaller guy, and Robert Shaw is, say, a medium guy, 5'9", 5'10", maybe. If you have someone like Sterling Hayden, say, opposite Richard Dreyfuss, physically it's no contest. And whereas you see in certain moments Shaw and Dreyfuss squaring up to each other, they're not a million miles away physically. So there's a chance that there's a genuine physical conflict. And it could, if Hooper got lucky, he could potentially take Quint, although you might not imagine that. But if you've got someone like Sterling Hayden, who is this 6 foot plus guy going up against Dreyfuss, I think it changes the dynamic of the characters, because Hooper knows I can only push this guy so far because I know he's going to kick my ass. So I
Yeah,
think again, it was all those happy accidents. Roy Scheider got the role because he overheard Spielberg talking about a shark crashing onto a boat at a party, and it happened to be Spielberg talking about it. So he said, "Well, I'll audition, I'll read." And then Dreyfus, looking at his role in I think it was the Education of Dudley Kravitz, I think it was, and
yeah.
he hated it, and he thought, I'm never going to work again. I need to get this part back. And Shaw just happened to be available, and he, got his role. So you got these three amazing actors just falling into place at the right time, and just purely by sort of circumstance, if you like. And again, for me, it's still the three greatest lead characters, or trio of characters I think ever cast. And I'm not just saying it because it's Jaws is my favorite movie, but I can't think of another movie that's
But
come
you know what?
close. I can't.
Remembering seeing it for the first time and thinking about the three main characters, in my opinion of them,
Mm,
the one that grew the most was Brody. It
mm,
was weird when the first viewing, he was just over. I thought overpowered
mm,
by Dreyfus and by Shaw.
mm,
And one of the things I'm wondering, sorry, one of the things I was wondering was, why did I not think about what Brody did to the role and what he brought to the role? And,
mm,
then it reminded me years later, an interview with Clint Eastwood, where he talked about acting and this is actually funny. He said this years before Bridges of Madison County, but he actually singled out Meryl Streep. He's like, I don't go for that emotional gymnastics. He says, you know who I think is a great actor? Bill Murray. And that's when I started to review Brody
mm,
and Schneider's character in Brody in that film. What he does, it's very subtle,
mm,
but very, very effective. It's just not as showy as Quint. It's not as
mm,
showy as Hooper. And over the years, that character has really grown on me. I obviously still love the other guys, but that was the one character that I went from almost not noticing as much to loving.
mm,
And there's some little great, moments in there with Scheider that, and I think I didn't understand as a 12-year-old what Spielberg was trying to say with the character. I didn't fully understand why he was so uncomfortable, like with the water. And
mm.
it's perfectly explained. I don't think maybe I took it as him not being that good of an actor, maybe. I don't know. But it was weird. Again, I'm 12 years old. It seemed to me that he seemed really uncomfortable, but
Mm,
that's what he was supposed to be.
mm.
Now,
I
he wanted to go away to be left alone at this island, not have to worry about murder.
Exactly. I think I had a very, very similar experience watching Jaws. When I first watched it as a kid, I mean, I was a bit younger than when you saw it. I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I watched it because the most interesting thing to me was the shark. I was just like, wow, there's this massive fish out there that's going to eat everything. Brilliant. Let's watch that 100 times. And then as you get older, it's like, because, you love the shark, you love Hooper because he's excitable. He's like this child and he's fascinated by this shark. And then you kind of grow a bit older, you get a few scars, go through a bit of life, and you maybe start to identify a little bit more with Quint, because he represents, I think the interesting thing about the three characters, because you put Brody kind of in the middle, but you've got Quint, who, in terms of the situation, he hates the sharks, whereas Hooper loves them. Quint represents holding on to the past. Hooper
Yeah,
represents the future, very similar to the Shaw Scheider, the Shaw Dreyfus relationship by the sounds of things. And you kind of got Brody in the middle, who's just trying to be the peacekeeper and the peacemaker, and he just wants a quiet life. But the most interesting thing for me about Brody, the character, is that he knew exactly what needed to be done at the beginning of the movie. Close the beaches, hire someone to kill the shark. That's all you need to do. But he was pressured into not doing it, and he was complicit in a cover-up. Let's be honest, he was complicit in a cover-up.
yeah, yeah,
But by the end of the movie, he's not going to go through that hell again, which I think is one of the biggest strengths and also one of the biggest missed opportunities in Jaws 2, because you can kind of see as soon as the shark comes back and there's another shark situation in Jaws 2, Brody's just like straight back on the orca in his mind. I'm not going through that again. You need to take
yeah,
care of it this time. And he really explodes on these people, which ends up him getting fired. Although, again, one of the all-time great deleted scenes from Jaws 2 is where they're all trying to decide whether to fire Brody or not. And they actually show the people voting, and Mayor Vaughn puts his hand up and votes against firing him because he believes in Brody. He knows what Brody's been through before, and he values this
yeah.
guy's and also then it leaves Hendrix in charge. Oh my God. Anyway, that's a different conversation. Um, so it's, as we say, I mean, the whole point of these conversations is to try and explore Jaws through the eyes of the people who have been inspired by the movie to pursue a career like you have, or people that have just watched the movie and are massive fans and become maybe shark experts or whatever it is. What do you think is the legacy of Jaws? What's it leaving behind? Or what is it going to maybe give us in the next 50 years?
I would say, and this is going to sound strange, but I think Jaws was the high watermark for film in general. And I think it was like we said, a perfect storm, happy accident turns into brilliance. But then the studios saw dollar signs. That's the first movie with the merchandising explosion. Yes, my sister had Jaws socks. Yes, she did. 1975, Jaws, everything. Every, I mean, it was crazy. And I think that's my controversial statement was, and this is actually kind of stolen from a good buddy of mine. He said that movies since 1975 have gone downhill. And I think part of what he's saying by that is they're thinking dollar signs instead of quality of film. Spielberg they were like trying to make Spielberg do Jaws too. And he tried and he goes, I killed the shark for a reason. I feel like I got to watch it again.
So do I. I feel like I've got to go watch it again. I'm doing 50 of these interviews and I've got to watch it 50 times now because people are telling me new things about the movie. It's just incredible. I'm going to wrap up now. But Nick, have you got any final thoughts that you'd like to share with the viewers and the listeners before we sign off?
Just watch the movie, study it, take it all in. Don't do I watched 2 minutes of it on TV or something. I'd really just remember what it was like seeing it for the first time and in all its glory and then drink to your leg.
You stole my sign off. That was what I was going to
Oh,
say. No, it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. Nick Marra predicting my questions and beating me to my own sign off. Incredible. Um,
sorry.
no, it's no problem. Guys, I've been Ross for the Daily Jaws, speaking with the unbelievably entertaining and knowledgeable Nick Marra for the 50th anniversary series of interviews. More great guests to come, but until next time, I'll drink to your legs and I'll bid you a fond farewell and adieu. That's it for today's deep dive into Jaws, the film that turned beaches into no swim zones and created the summer blockbuster. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to follow, rate and review. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, just when you thought it was safe to stop listening, there's plenty more episodes to come. Please be sure to check out the work of Minorities in Shark Sciences and also the Tourette's Association of America. That's it for now, guys, but I'll catch you next time. I'll drink to your legs.